Okay, guys, so I believe you can see my screen. If not, please shout, and we're gonna get to it. So today's presentation is another event from the Inside Out series. And today we're going to talk about not just DNS security, but also DNS layer security. We're going to approach both of them because both of them are important depending on your setup. Now, the point with this particular session is to take everybody from this type of positioning where we're all stressed. We look at all of these metrics. We try to be ahead of what's going on in the world, but sometimes it seems so heavy to do that, and this is actually a problem because we could do it in a better way, in a safer way, in a stress-free way, or at least as much as possible. And the purpose with this series, Inside Out, is to take you from this, what you're seeing right here, to this, right? Living the dream, making sure our systems are working, because at the end of the day, we need our systems to perform our tasks. Our business needs us to perform our tasks so that it is productive. And yeah, we really need to make sure our systems work. We don't need to make this the business objective itself, but without these, businesses will fall. I have a question about the recording. Yes, we will have the recording afterwards. At least the normal section will be posted on YouTube as well. You guys will receive an email link with it from the webinar tool. But the extended session, which I'm going to mention in a few seconds, will be just a private link. So anybody wanting that, they need to contact me in private. So guys, this Inside Out series actually was born from the first webinar we did in the year. In the first webinar in the year, we looked at all the current trends, all the current threats that are out there. And at the same time, we looked at the 5-step formula that we can apply in order to have a safer and more stress-free, how I like to call it, cyber defense, right? So we said we need to mitigate entry points, deploy fierce reactive security, ensure the needed visibility, ensure the needed actionability based on that visibility, and also mitigate the human factor, which splits into a lot of things, right? Having our employees good, having the necessary resources, which there's a scarcity going on in that space right now, and all those other things that are related to the employee, right? To the human factor in our business. Now, today we're going to talk about, of course, one of the other things that we need to do, and also Heimdal does very well, mitigating the entry points, securing your internet traffic. So enough about the intro. Let's get to the agenda. What are we discussing today? So today specifically, we will be looking at what is DNS and why does this matter, comparing multiple types of internet security tools that one can use, the pros and cons of each of these tools. We will do a summary, like a few musts that we need to take into consideration when we look at our securing our devices and their presence online in 2023, a Q&A segment, and of course, optional at the end. For anybody that wants to still stick around for 20 minutes or so, we're going to do a quick walkthrough of the Heimdal DNS layer security tools, the threat prevention endpoint, and network. Now, some quick housekeeping questions are welcomed along the way. I will read them out loud as often as I can. If I miss one, we will do them in the Q&A segment because we have one. And if there are so many questions, like sometimes they are, we will just get back to you guys on email. Also, most active participants can win a Heimdal Security home product license. You guys need to mention in the post-webinar form that you would like the chance to win it. I just use random org and I draw out the winner. The post-webinar feedback form is super important for me, both in regards of follow-up so that I can make these sessions better for you, as well as for both in regards of feedback for me and also follow-up in case you guys want to connect with me. Maybe you want a product demo. So that's the place where you would have the option to do that. The extended segment, as I mentioned, is a total bonus. The purpose of the webinar and the substance of it will be delivered by then. That's for people that really want to see what Heimdal can do in that regards. And last but not least, LinkedIn chats, connections, emails are more than welcome. So please feel free to reach out. Now, since this is again a public webinar, we need to mention two things. Who is Heimdal, right? So Heimdal is a cybersecurity company that comes out of Denmark, Copenhagen, and we offer a very, very robust set of cybersecurity and computer management solutions, all of them working from one agent, the ones that are not a network-based solution, all of them connecting to one platform, the Unified Threat Console. And last but not least, we have one product actually, which is a service on the page that doesn't show the connection to the Unified Threat Console. And the reason is that we just released our Threat Hunting and Action Center, and this particular globe is a visual extraction from the product itself. So this last service, the XDR-powered Managed Detection and Response team, is actually working off of the Threat Hunting and Action Center. So in a nutshell, this is Heimdal, and with this product stack, we are currently servicing over 11,000 business-to-business customers across the globe. Now, since this is again a public session, I also need to tell you guys who I am. My name is Andrei. I am the Cybersecurity and Heimdal Product Expert here at Heimdal. I have over 4.5 years within Heimdal and over 5,000 meetings with customers, partners, everything related to cybersecurity. So with that being said, I want to just dive into the topic today and see exactly what we have to talk about. Okay, some other questions, some new joiners. Hi there, Zubair, thank you again. Somebody asking for the recording. Yes, we will have one. So yeah, that's I think that's good for an intro. We're already 10 minutes past the hour. Let's dive into the topic at hand. So when it comes to DNS, what we need to understand is, as you some of you guys know, because I see a lot of returning people, and some of you guys that are just newly to our sessions will find out, I like to break it down from the base at the beginning. So what's the base here? The base are the definitions, right? So let's see, what's DNS? What's DNS security? DNS is basically the domain name system. That's what it stands for. And it's basically a distribution naming system for computer services and other resources on the internet. Because when you go on the internet and you want to go to HBO, to Heimdal Security, to whatever domain you want to, Google, you're actually not going to google.com. You're going to an IP address, which is a numerical code made out of 4 sequences. So basically the DNS is that service that whenever you want to go to a specific address, it actually goes, finds the code behind your address and takes you to that particular website or page or domain or how you want to call it. DNS security, on the other hand, it's basically formed out of extensions that are trying to secure the integrity of these domain name systems, right? So by definition, the domain name system security extensions are a suite of extensions specific by the Internet Engineering Task Force team for securing data exchange in between the domain name systems and the Internet protocol networks, the IP networks. So trying to secure this particular process in order for attackers not to poison it in any way or compromise it in any way. We will see ways of doing that in the presentation today. And a third definition that I really want you guys to know about, what's DNS layer security, which people usually go and say just DNS security. But when they do that, they just refer to the big phenomena. DNS layer security, the thing that we actually use on our endpoints, it's basically cybersecurity tools or infrastructure deployed with the scope of ensuring the safety and legitimacy of DNS requests. HTTP and HTTPS requests would be a good bonus when you look at your particular DNS layer security tool. Now that we have the definitions, let's actually see how a DNS request works, right? So we have the internet over here, resembled by the globe with the network on it. What do we need next? We need a computer, right? So basically my computer, the computer that I'm on right now, wants to connect to the internet. So when I want that, I will go in the computer and add a website address. Let's say heimdalsecurity.com in this example. Now, when my computer sees this, what it usually does, it being a new address, I never navigated to this so far, it goes to something that we call DNS servers. And DNS servers are two types, recursive server and the second type, authority server. What's the difference? It's super easy. An authoritative server is the one that has the responses all the time. The recursive server is another server along the way that is just responsible for caching the responses so that you don't need to always go to the main server to grab the response. It's not just two servers that in reality, it's a whole network of them. And you connect to the one that's closest to you. So getting back to the example, when you want to do this particular request, the DNS servers will know that you want to navigate to heimdalsecurity.com, and they will start searching for what is that particular number sequence that represents heimdalsecurity.com. Once they find it, they will navigate back and send it back to your computer and tell your computer navigate to this particular address. Now, when this happens, the computer knows exactly where to go, and it will retrieve exactly the web page. In our example, it's going to be the Heimdal web page, right? that you wanted to go to. Now, some people would like to call this an internet phone book, and it's actually a very good example on how you could compare this particular tool. Now, so far so good. Things are easy, but let's see actually some other things that that we need to know about. Whenever you think about this particular situation, your computer needing to go to the internet, right? You have your computer and you think you just go to the internet, and whenever you do this, and I believe a lot of people in this session being professionals would know about this, but a lot of people are still surprised when they hear this. You think about browsers, right? I go on a browser, I navigate to what? heimdalsecurity.com, HBO, CNN, whatever, right? Netflix, you name it. However, I actually want to point out, and we will also show this as a practical demonstration, that each time you connect using one of these browsers and you go to CNN.com, HBO, Heimdal Security, you don't just make one connection. When that particular website loads, there are a bunch of connections going on in the backend, sometimes even 200, 300, 400 connections. And that's basically one of the risks that we have in today's world, because all of those connections can be banners, can be adware, can be injected with things, and we need to be aware of that. I'll show you an example in a few seconds. At the same time, your computer, without you knowing sometimes, or basically without you seeing this, will also do internet or network connections to communicate via email, right? Via other applications like Excel, Word, Adobe. But most importantly, even the OS itself actually shows this. So basically, the conclusion on this is that your machines are in permanent communication with the internet above and beyond what you generate, or in some cases, what you are aware of. So for this, let's actually bring up a virtual machine for a second. Let me connect quickly to a virtual machine so that we can actually see this live in front of us, right? Not just talk about it. So let's see, where's my beautiful webinar machine over here. Just a second, I need to pull this this machine up. It will just take a second here. By the way, so far, guys, if you have any questions, please do let me know. Okay, and we're gonna look at the machine connections in a few seconds. Oh, okay. While the webinar is the virtual machine for the webinar is spinning on, let me also show you something. So let me go to Google. You should be seeing my Google webpage over here. Let me check in my quick checker. Yeah, the Google webpage is on. And now what I would like to see is, let's see, more tools, developer tools. And I want to see the network connections whenever I do such a connection, right? So over here, I have network space, right? If I go to, let's take an example, CNN.com. Let's see what happens. So I connect to CNN.com, but see what happens afterwards immediately. 21, 23, 40, 50, 60, 80, 70, 100. See how many requests are happening over here. And I hope that you guys can see my full screen. If not, please let me know in the chat. So basically, guys, all of these are happening and loading just so that you can see the CNN website. See, over 200 requests. Any of these requests can be malicious, and that's actually the problem in today's world, right? CNN can have a compromise on their website without them even knowing this. So the final count is 227 requests made just to load CNN. Actually, it's even going further, 231, right? So this is actually what happens when we look at the situation. Now the VM is spawning right now. I also want to look at a Wireshark connection so that I can show you guys what's happening underneath. And Torben is saying this is crazy. That's exactly what's happening, Torben, because we are limited to see exactly our connection, right, that we do. However, in the backend, a lot of things happen that we're not aware of most of the time. Of course, IT professionals will be aware of, they will monitor everything like this, but not everybody can do that, right? And not everybody should be in the situation that they need to always do that. Okay, let me see what's going on with this VM because I want to show you guys what is the computer communicating. Okay, let's see. Okay, perfect. I found what I needed. Yeah, it seems the VM is offline. I wanted to show you guys the Wireshark connections and show you guys, even if you don't click on anything, but we can do that in another session. I don't want to hold you guys from the presentation itself. Even if you do not do any connection, so you just open the OS and you just look at it. If you put a tool like Wireshark, which is a free tool that you can download, it's an open source, that particular tool will show you all the network traffic that is happening on the machine. So if you guys want to test this out, I would actually recommend doing such a test sometimes, just for your amusement. You will be astounded when you will look at how many connections will happen on your machine without you even knowing or accepting them to do so, right? And that's the problem. Now, getting back to the actual presentation, let's look at how a classical network was set up, right? So when we look at the classical network, we had the company network, right? In the company network, we had items such as computers, servers, and everything. Now, the company network, when it wanted to communicate with the internet, it has a gateway, right? The external facing point of the network, which is usually secured by a network security tool. In this case, I placed the Heimdal head because we also do that. We secure your outbound and inbound internet connections. Now, this also goes through a firewall usually because these are two layers of security. Firewall, if you guys look at the OSI OC model, the firewall is on level 3. The DNS security is on level 6 or 7. I don't recall exactly. If you guys can correct me on this one, but I believe it's 7, right? The application layer. So after the firewall, it goes to the internet. Now, what happens after that? let's see what happens after that when we have a computer outside of the network. I do have a very long question over here, but I'll read it in a few seconds. I don't want to keep the audience. Now, if this outside computer, called a roaming computer, which is somebody that is also accessing the tools and resources of the company, tries to go to the internet directly, this is a huge problem, right? Because it's not secured. Because if you look at the graph, only through the firewall, the gateway and the firewall, you have the company security. And this is how it was a bit back in the day. Now, what happens, this connection is something that should never happen. So we'll put an X on it and we'll take it off the map. This is not the right way of doing it. So how was it done so far? It would have went to something that is called a VPN server or gateway. The VPN server added the computer in the company network, although it was not in the company network. It was connecting from home or from Starbucks or from McDonald's, whatever, right? Then it will send the necessary signals out through the gateway, through the firewall to the internet. Then it comes back through the firewall, through the gateway, and only then it comes back to the computer. So this is how it was until a while ago, right? Until everybody started to be a remote user. But now if we look at today's landscape, this is a classical model that we're looking at right now. Of course, you have some appliances throughout the network, but that's not important today. But if we look at the modern model of a network, this is where things become very different. So we now have something called the cloud, right? Everybody wants to know what the cloud is. Some people think it's actually a physical cloud somewhere in space. So basically, guys, the cloud is a decentralized structure of servers across the globe that you can access without needing to go through company network to get to those resources that previously were sitting on servers within your network. The difference is you don't need to worry about the security. You don't need to worry about the servers being running, right? Which was a huge stress for the IT teams. Because now, in case server 1 falls, server 2 takes the connection, and so on. It's their responsibility, the cloud provider, to give us this. Now, in between the cloud and your network, of course, you have, again, a gateway and a firewall. But now, let's look again at these roaming computers, right? Let's put another roaming computer here so that we can make some connections. So first, a roaming computer. If the roaming computer tries to go in an unsecured way to the cloud, this is a bad thing. If it tries to go to the internet, it's a bad thing again. If the one at the bottom tries again to go to the internet, it is a bad thing. Now, let's put some X's on these connections and let's wipe them. What is happening now? The first version is for them to VPN in the network itself, which in some situations we don't do because the VPNs are not required anymore. So what we need to do is we need to put a security tool on them that will actually make sure that they get the necessary level of security without them being in the network. So now, if they need to connect to the cloud, if they need to connect to the internet, they do it in a safe way. So you cannot afford having computers that are not protected connecting to your resources, because if that computer, let's take the example of the one in the far left corner, if that computer connects to your cloud, it can be even the drive that you're using for your documents, anything, and it has ransomware on it, guess where the ransomware will go first to encrypt? Directly in the cloud. Right? So that's a problem. That's why we need the security to no longer be only on the network side, but we need to move the security more towards the computer side and make sure we still have control and visibility over what's happening. But when we look at today's modern landscape, we barely have computers at work in the network. All the computers are not just these two computers, are actually a lot of computers that are currently roaming, basically outside of the company network, accessing company resources, accessing company cloud resources, and accessing the internet all day long without being on a VPN, which again carries a risk. That's why we need to secure all these computers as good as we can so that we can actually have them prepared. Now, this is how a modern network looks like, and I know that it gave a lot of people in IT, including myself sometimes, and including my IT teams sometimes, a lot of headache, right? Because we needed to transition from the classical model, everybody in the network, to the current model, which is 90% of the people roaming. Now, with that being said, we understood exactly how these work, how a DNS connection works. We understood exactly how a classical network was running, and we understood a modern day network and how it is running. Now, let's actually do something fun. Let's do a cyber trivia. So for the people that are new to the session, let me explain how the cyber trivia works. We're going to place a question. We will then share the answer and the source. But in between sharing the answer and the source and the question, you guys will have the chance to guess the answer. And the person or people that are coming closest to the answer will win a Heimdal Home Premium license. This is a next-gen antivirus, a patching tool, and the DNS layer security that we're talking about for your home computer for 1 year. So let's see, what's the first question in our cyber trivia? This is a super interesting one. What percentage of the global malware that is currently existing leverages DNS for command and control communication? Worth saying, what's command and control communication? It's basically malicious servers that are used to give commands back to the malware on your computer so that it knows what to do. So let's see, who cares to give a guess? We have Konstantin saying 80%, we have Steven 35, Dustin saying 90%, 68%, 80%, Steve answer more than 90, Girish 90, 57, 90, 25%, 92%, and we have a winner that specifically nailed it. It's Joseph with 91%. Right? So 91% of the malware that currently exists in the world leverages DNS in order to get its commands and do the damage to your computer. So guys, if you just secure this, 91% of the malware out there cannot hurt you, right? And the source is Cisco, which is actually a driver in this particular industry. They are we're very well versed in this. It's actually our main competitor in this space. So yeah, I like to call out the good guys in the industry. So question 2, out of all the computers connected to the internet, how many of them are infected or members of botnets, right? A botnet means your computer is tied to a malicious network and can always be leveraged to download malware, to be used in a denial of service attack or a distributed denial of service attack. Basically, your computer is hooked to a malicious network without you being known. So Steve says this is unknown. Okay. Anybody else wants to come with an answer? We have Dustin 45. We have Carl saying 40. Konstantin saying 30. 76. 20. 22. 25. Torben is the winner. 25%, and it's actually in between 16 and 25%. And also Jens mentioned 25, so both of you guys are the winners over here. It's 25% of all computers in the world, guys. 1 in 4 computers in the world is connected to a botnet. What can happen if you're connected to a botnet? So basically you have an open channel to receive malware all the time. So if you go on the dark web, which I don't really recommend you guys do in an unsupervised way, if you go to the dark web, there are people selling the service, right? So you are an attacker that wants to distribute a new backdoor or an info stealer or a spyware, a general spyware, or even ransomware, right? And you go to the dark web and you buy a botnet distribution. So basically you go to the dark web, and if I'm the botnet owner, you pay me so that I take your malware and send it through my botnet. Of course, not everybody will get it, right? Because each malware has its own complexity. Some leverages out-of-date software. Some leverages the fact that you have admin rights, right? So let's say from the entire botnet, 25% will actually get the infection. In that 25%, you basically have, as an attacker, a lot of space to play around with. And Torben is actually asking a very interesting question. Most of them without even knowing it, right? And that is correct, Torben, because if they would know it, they would immediately take the necessary measures so that they can take themselves out of the botnet, because this is very dangerous, right? And we don't know, but 1 in 4 computers is actually infected and a member of a botnet. And this comes from, as a source, Science Direct, which they made an analysis at the global level. Okay, so question number 3. Steve has a very good question. How does one check? Well, Steve, you need to look at command and control beaconing, right? That's one of them, because a botnet will always come back to its command and control. You can also look, depending on the botnet, at registry entries. There are some indicators of compromise that are specifically used in this. We could actually connect and talk more about it. But question number 3 is, how many endpoints were recently, and this is 1-2 months ago, discovered with info stealer infections? What's an info stealer, you might ask? So info stealer is a type of spyware on your computer. And by the way, guys, this is in millions. Just wanted to mention that. It's a type of spyware on your computer that's so stealth, your antivirus will never catch it. If it's a regular antivirus that doesn't look at specific indicators of compromise, it will never catch it. And it actually is built so that it sends back information such as passwords, credit card details, right? All of them have their specific configuration, but they're very stealth in the computer. So in number of millions, share your response. We have Constantine saying 150 million. We have 500 million, 145, 150 million, 50 million, 395. Come on, you're getting closer. Plus 300 million, 400 million. You're getting colder now. It would be a huge problem if we had 400 million infections with this. Of course, this is what has been recently discovered. We don't know the ones not discovered yet. So guys, let's stop if nobody else wants to share. Let me see who's closest to this. I believe the closest one is Yen, saying 50 million. So guys, there was a recent study made by Hudson Rock, a cybersecurity company out of the States, and they found more than 11 million, close to 12 million, if you look at the numbers, of computers that had info stealer spyware on them, and they didn't know about it. And the tragic thing in this equation is that 84%, if I'm not mistaken, had antiviruses, which were powerful antiviruses, right? I won't name them, but if anybody wants to see the full article on this, just connect with me either on LinkedIn or email and tell me about it, and I'll send you the link. You can see a pie chart with what AVs they had on their computers that were not picking this up. So that's why when we look at security, just looking at AV is not sufficient, unfortunately. So I know that a lot of other people would like to win the license, so I have a bonus question. You guys know I love the bonus question, right? And believe me, this one is very, very interesting. I believe that everybody will guess this. So the first one that guesses it, that's the winner. What percentage of active ransomware families, right, leverage DNS, HTTP, HTTPS throughout their attack chain, either to get the virus in, or to execute the virus, or to take your data out, right? And Steve is the winner, 100%, right? And we also have a second person and a third person guessing it. Guys, all you three people are winners, right? 100%. And guess who the source on this is? It's just myself, right? It's common sense, because all the malware in today's world, I wouldn't say all the malware, right? Yeah, Girish, you are also one of the winners. 3 people won. Let me call them out. So Steve, Steven, and Girish. All of you guys won, right? So guys, if you look at today's world, everybody is connected. So without being connected, you basically are avoiding a lot of the stress with viruses, right? I'm not saying that it's not possible for somebody to come with a USB flash drive and infect your computer. I'm not saying that. But even with that, if you have an antivirus, and you can even have the standard antivirus from the OS, which by the way is pretty powerful, if you have the entire virus program on the flash drive and you put it in the computer, the antivirus will catch it immediately. What's actually happening is they come with a Trojan, right? Which is a very, very, very small file, or with fileless malware that leverages your processes. And after they do reconnaissance, know what antivirus you have, know if they can disable it or not, and all of that, only then they deliver the attack. What do they need to do that? They need your network. So if you don't have network connection, this actually won't be a problem, but unfortunately, we cannot just unplug all computers, right? So let's see together. Let's actually have a question for the entire audience. I will be launching a poll for you since we are talking about this. And you should be seeing the poll right now. How have you ever picked up on suspicious behavior that your AV or regular security tools, because some people might be using more than AV, which is actually healthy, did not flag? So the answers are yes, all the time, and it annoys me. I think so, but I cannot tell. No, my system actually catches everything. So I'm very, very curious what the stats are here. So I can tell you nobody is voting for no, which is very interesting. I'll take the chance to drink some coffee. Okay, so closing the poll and sharing with everybody so that you can see the results. Only 4%, which guys, please do tell to everybody in this particular audience, what are you guys using as a security setup? Because if you catch everything, you are actually super lucky, or you invested a lot of research and passion into what you're doing. 13% of people said yes all the time, and it annoys me. And 83% of people are actually in the unknown space. We do see suspicious behavior, but we don't know exactly what this can be. So that's why we need visibility. Going back to that initial slide, right? Having the security preventive, right? Mitigating entry points, reactive, second. And last but not least, having visibility and actionability. This is actually critical. So thank you for sharing this. I'm hiding the poll. This will get back to the presentation in a few seconds. Okay, next on the list, what are we looking at? Let's look at DNS attacks and DNS techniques, and also malware that leverages DNS, HTTP, and HTTPS. So again, we're splitting into two categories, very important here. DNS attacks are attacks that are aimed towards the DNS servers, very important. DNS techniques and malware that leverage DNS, this is aimed for your endpoints, your servers, not the DNS servers, and so on. So we need a clear differentiator in this. So the first thing I hear whenever I talk to somebody about this, the first DNS attack that everybody thinks of is DDoS or DOS. Well, I actually have a line crossing that off the list, because a DOS or a DDoS is not necessarily a DNS attack. It's basically, by definition, denial of service or distributed denial of service, which is denial of service on steroids, right? And this can actually attack any service. It can attack your website, it can attack your printer service, it can attack everything. It can also attack your DNS service. That's totally fair. But it's not a DNS attack. So people sometimes mistake that, and I just wanted to share that with you guys. Now let's look at some actual DNS attacks. Now this actually is important for you in a few situations. If you're running your own DNS server, that's very important, right? Not everybody is doing that in today's world. They usually are running security DNS servers like the one from Heimdal, or Google's DNS, Microsoft's DNS, etc. Right? We know the deal. But DNS spoofing or poisoning is one of the attacks. How does that work as an attack? Well, this is basically a process where malware is used to change the endpoint DNS configuration, allowing the attacker to see what DNS queries are done and redirect them to their server, showing you other results. Again, going to that phone book. If you search for Heimdal Security, it will not show you the IP of Heimdal Security. It will show you what IP they want so that you can come and put your information there. Let's take another example. You search for PayPal, right? And instead of you seeing the PayPal domain, you see a PayPal domain that is literally the same spelling, but at the end, it's not an L for Lima or for Lagos. You actually have an uppercase I from India, right? And you put your credentials there. It looks perfect. However, in that moment, you give your PayPal credentials to the attackers. And what happens to you? You are redirected to the original PayPal, and you can do your transactions, but at the same time, you lost your credentials without knowing. So this is basically a reverse of phishing, right? You don't go directly to that website. You actually try to go to the legitimate website, but you are spoofed. And in that moment, your DNS resolution comes back with their malicious website. Then you have amplification or reflection attacks. We talked about distribution, the DDoS or DOS. This is a type of DOS that is done on DNS servers. Subdomain attack. This is again a DOS type, and it actually will try to overwhelm the DNS server so that it can become unresponsive. Then phantom domain. It's also similar to the subdomain attack. This basically does not try to overwhelm the DNS by asking it a lot of questions. It actually asks questions with no responses. So like I'm querying for Andrei.com. I know Andrei.com doesn't exist, but if I'm sending 1 million queries, the DNS server will become unresponsive. Then we have cache poisoning, which is similar to the DNS spoofing. Unauthorized update, in which I change a DNS record. And last but not least, network floods, which basically renders the DNS network connection useless because it's overwhelmed in that moment. So guys, this is just a quick list of potential DNS attacks. But let's look at what's most important for us in today's world, because none of us are maybe DNS providers, and not most of us have our DNS servers, right? But what we do have are endpoints connected to the internet. So let's see. What are some techniques that malware leverages when it comes to DNS? DNS hijacking, spoofing, or redirecting. So basically, what does that mean? On a computer, you have your regular DNS address, right? Okay, so when we have that DNS address, if somebody changes that in malicious attempt, now they can redirect you to anything, right? And this is usually done with a DNS worm or Trojan. Now, guys, let me know, do you still see the screen? I have Steve saying that we should update. I think you guys can see the screen. If you don't see the screen, please let me know. Then another interesting item is DNS tunneling, which is similar, right? But they don't need to move your DNS address. They just tunnel you like a VPN to literally another address. Then something very, very important. We have DNS exfiltration and DNS infiltration. A lot of people know about DNS exfiltration, right? DNS exfiltration is basically the malicious actor is doing DNS requests from malware that's installed on your computer, and in the name of the request, they exfiltrate information. For example, I, on your computer, noticed a password, right? It's called, I don't know, password at 123, right? What I will do is I will do a DNS request called password at 123.google.com, just an example. That DNS request goes to my server, right? Because I spoofed your DNS, I hijacked it. And without you even knowing, and your security tools will never stop that, because that's the problem with DNS exfiltration. It's trusted by your security tools. Without you knowing, your password added in the DNS request just came to my server. and now I exfiltrated information from your computer done automatically via my malware to my server, and you don't have even a clue that that happened. Now, DNS infiltration, this is the interesting part, guys. With DNS requests, sending a request to a bad domain actually gets you a response back. So what you can do as a malware malicious actor, you can actually have components or commands for your malware that's inside the victim's computer coming through these DNS requests one by one. And again, why is this dangerous? Because it bypasses at least 98% of the firewalls out there, because firewalls are built to allow DNS requests. And that's actually the problem here. So common attacks are set in multiple stages, right? If you come with the entire malware all at once, in that particular moment, you will actually have the AV fighting it, or the other security tools. But if you come with them bits by bits, and on the way you do reconnaissance, you see exactly what security tools they have, and you look at how to disable them or how to bypass them, this is why you do a step-by-step infiltration of your malware. So simply you come with a bash script or PowerShell script at the beginning, and then you have what is called the second stage payload that comes in. And this is how it can actually come in. This is a method. Another technique that we should be aware of is actually the domain generation algorithm. So short DGA. What does that mean? Basically, attackers develop these domain generation algorithms, and whenever their malware gets picked up and their domains are getting picked up by security tools, which they are, right? Because people are reporting them, they actually create in an instant hundreds or even not thousands of other domains so that they can continue their attack. That's why having your standard filter, which is some intelligence people sitting behind it and entering domains while they after they analyze them, is no longer enough, because the attacker can spin in a few seconds hundreds or not even thousands of domains, and the intelligence people that are analyzing them and putting them in the database cannot keep up with that. Then we have the reverse of the domain generation algorithm, which is called fast flux. So basically, attackers, when using a fast flux technique, they set up so many IP addresses per each of those malicious domains so that they can quickly go in a succession from one to the other in order to avoid finding their location and also avoid taking them down. Because some people asked, okay, but if I block the IP, am I good? No, because they will use a fast flux technique and change that IP as fast as they do the DGA, the domain generation algorithm. And also, last but not least, we also have malicious newly registered domains, called in the industry NDRs. This is basically, again, a technique in which attackers will create slight variations of legitimate domains in attempt to fool people to click on them and enter passwords or download malware and so on. So again, you need to make sure that you can capture this particular part whenever you look at your security. Now, what is some malware that is using this? So guys, I believe you already know the response, right? All malware or all current and modern malware is using this. Some examples: ransomware, remote access malware, fileless malware, spyware, including the most evasive info stealer, adware, trojans, worms, rootkits, keyloggers, botnets, wipers, mobile malware, viruses, everything, guys. So that's actually the problem with malware today. If we don't secure our network connections and our DNS connections, then we're basically exposed to quite a bit of a danger. So now we're going to go into some tools that could actually help us. We have content or category or browser filters, how they're called, internet security, usually built with your AV, network proxy, which is very powerful, network firewall, network intrusion protection and detection systems, or detection and protection systems, depending on the vendor, how they put their name, and DNS layer security that can also work at the endpoint and at the network at the same time. So let's actually look at 4 elements for each of them. We will look at level at which they work. We will look at security posture that they offer you, configuration and maintenance, which is very important because we don't have the time to just toy around with all the tools, and dependencies, right? 4 key things, or actually 5 in this case. The content filter, the browser filter. This works at the browser level, but we saw earlier that not just the browser is doing the communication. So if your processes are communicating, your services, that is not captured. So that's why security level is very low. Configuration and maintenance, super easy. You literally have nothing to do aside of saying what categories you don't want your browser to access. And dependency, none. If it's connected to the internet, it will work. So let's look at the other one. The other one over here is the internet security that is usually bundled with your AV. Level, it works at browser on the endpoint. Security, low to medium, because again, it doesn't capture all the other things which are very dangerous. Then configuration and maintenance or management, it's super easy to maintain. You actually don't do anything. It's just a setting in your command panel for your AV. And dependencies, again, it has none because it works at the endpoint browser level. Network proxy. Now, this is where we get a bit heavy with the details. This works at the corporate network level because it needs a proxy server, right? The security level is medium to high, and it depends on how you configure it and how much you put work into it. Configuration and maintenance, super heavy, because this is basically a filter that allows you to say what goes and what does not, right? And if you do not configure it properly and add all the things that should not connect in there, it will be open. And dependency, it needs you to be in the corp network, a corp connection, which you saw people are roaming right now and they're not VPNing in the network to access the resources. So the proxy will be rendered useless in this case. Network firewall, again, works at corporate network level. Security is medium to high. Configuration heavy, again, configuration and management heavy again. And it needs the corp connection, the network, corporate network connection. Again, medium to high is basically differentiated by how you configure it. You can be very high with it, but then you will have a very heavy operation. Basically, people will not be able to connect to things unless you unblock them, which is, again, hindering the business process. Next, let's look at the network intrusion protection and detection system. The network intrusion protection and detection system is actually a behavior-based system that sits in your network and tries to analyze suspicious activities and abnormalities. It works at corporate network level. Security is very high. Configuration is heavy. But again, if you don't have your computers in the network, it will not do the job for you. And last but not least on this, DNS layer security. So it works at endpoint or network level, depending where you want it. It can actually work at both at the same time. Security is high. Configuration and management, it's super easy to do. And dependencies, it has none, because if it's on the endpoint, no matter where you connect from that endpoint, Starbucks, McDonald's, the public library, it still protects you. So with that being said, it's you guys know exactly which is the tool that will do you the best result, right? It's not one size fits all, but at the same time, some of these tools contain a lot of the capabilities from the others. For example, the DNS layer security also has network intrusion protection and detection. It also has the category filtering for the browser. Internet security is literally based on some of the same rules that the DNS layer security is based on. You can make it act as a proxy, so you can block things and just allow some other things. So it's basically you need to find what works best for you and for the needs of your organization. Now, with that being said, I also want to ask you a second question. I will launch another poll, and you should see it in a few seconds. From a scale of 1 to 3, how confident are you with your current internet or network security setup? So the answers are easy. 1, I'm not. 3, I'm very confident. So we have people usually voting for the middle one, so and so. I do these questions so that I can have a break and drink some water or some coffee. Steve is asking, did Heimdal detector stop info stealer? Yes, Steve, and this is based on the machine learning capability of the DNS filter. I'll go in Heimdal details in a few seconds, but yes, it will stop info stealers. Okay. So we're gonna just sit about 3 minutes after the regular time until we finish the webinar side, and then we're gonna take a break for a few minutes, and then we start the optional segment. If at least one of you guys are still here and want to see the optional segment, I'll perform it for you guys. So closing the poll, sharing the results, we have, and I'm very happy, 10% very secure and confident with their current setup. We have 6% saying that they need to revise their strategy, and we have 80% so and so. I think there can be some improvements here and there. So congratulations to everybody, because it's good that you have this level of awareness, and you can find people or organizations that can help you with this. So with that being said, let me also show you just a few details about the Heimdal Threat Prevention products. This is basically our DNS filter. So basically, guys, this can work at endpoint or network or both of them at the same time. The thing with this one is a two-way DNS filter, and it will scan without hindering your internet speed all the traffic requests that are going on at DNS, HTTP, and HTTPS level. It leverages neural network as one of the intelligent sources. So it basically looks at the website and it can predict if this is or will be dangerous or not, based on the current database that it had. And very important, you have a bunch of control features with it that can actually help you. A lot of visibility and so on and so forth. Now, I will go over this more in the extended, so there's no point in pushing over it a lot, and you guys can connect with me or with the demo team for this. With that being said, the key takeaways from today's session are: your device is communicating more than meets the eye. The majority of malware leverages network connections, specifically DNS, HTTP, and HTTPS. Traditional cybersecurity is not fit to cover the current digital landscape, unfortunately. And last but not least, regular DNS layer security tools without AI cannot keep up with the hyper-evolving threats, unfortunately. Because at the end of the day, if you have some malware that uses DGAs, and if you have a traditional level DNS layer security tool, it will not be able to stop it. So before I go into the Q&A, I do have a lot of questions coming in which are interesting. I want to tell you, you have two handouts that you can download: the endpoint and the network version of our threat prevention product. The next webinar is advanced malware security. We're going to go in those malware types and break them down and see what do we need as IOCs and everything to defend about them. And now the Q&A, so that everybody can then disconnect if they don't want to sit for the extended. So I had a question earlier that it was a long one, so I'm going back to it. Okay, DNS over HTTPS, so basically the DOH, is used to secure DNS traffic. However, using that slows down new connections set up significantly, as DOH server is a bottleneck compared to public DNS infrastructure. How to avoid this restriction? Basically, Konstantin, I hope you're still here in the session. DOH server, basically, which DOH server are you using? Because some of them are a bottleneck, but some are not. So basically the DOH server should have its specific address, and you can configure it. And actually the Heimdal tool allows you to add your DOH server in there so that it knows where to configure this for you. It is a bottleneck in some situations, but at the end of the day, it also brings you that much needed privacy, right? Your ISP can no longer see what you're resolving. which is something huge, right? People were using VPNs for that. I hope this answered the question. Oh, Quad 9, you're referring to Quad 9. I need to look into that, Konstantin. I will, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn or on email. I have the details here on the page, and we can talk about more about it. Okay, Carl is asking, how about versions of your software for Linux? Do you plan some? Carl, we are starting Linux coverage more and more. We started with the patching, but Linux is very secured compared to Windows, right, and to Mac. So if I take it from a security standpoint, Linux is the most secured, Mac OS after that, and Microsoft OS Windows is the last one. So that's why the majority of the attackers focus on Microsoft. That's why we focus there as well. I can ask the development team if they have any plans on extending the threat prevention for Linux. Let's see, Girish is asking, if someone is using Heimdal Threat Prevention, do they still need to have endpoint protection? Well, those are different layers, Girish. What do you refer by endpoint protection? Do you refer just as reactive security? Because at the end of the day, even if we use threat prevention, and if you don't have a reactive security, if somebody comes with a stick and puts it a flash drive and puts it in your computer, the threat prevention will stop it from going online and doing malicious communication. But if the attack is just on the flash drive, it's basically a problem, right? You still need to have reactive security as well. Both of them together make actually the best fit. Let's see, is it possible to find a comparison chart somewhere, or could I get it by email? Let me know exactly by email what comparison chart you need, and I can work inside and help you. Okay, and we have another question. Will that be any multi-tenant dashboard to have a good overview of status of customers? This is an MSP provider question. Yes, we actually have that new product, Threat Hunting and Action Center, which shows you on a globe all your customers, all your endpoints that you're managing as a managed service provider, and you see them by risk level. If you didn't see this particular item, I do have a partner webinar in which I showcased it. We also have a user webinar upcoming for that specifically. So Tony, just mark in the post-webinar form that book a meeting, a 15 meeting with me, and we can talk more about it.